Not only do we have no idea how the ancient Egyptians actually constructed the pyramids, but we have no feasible clue how they lifted stones as heavy as 1,000 tons, 2 million pounds, and then inexplicably transported them hundreds of miles. Make no mistake, it is a fact that the Egyptians left us with no explanation for how they moved stones of that magnitude hundreds of miles and then lifted and stacked them hundreds of feet above the ground. And in this video, I'm going to start off by sharing a few fascinating details that will primer your brain, and by the end of this video, very likely blow your mind. So let me start off by mentioning that the largest and heaviest stone blocks in the Great Pyramid of Giza are 70 to 80 ton rose granite stones that originate from the Aswan Quarry, which is more than 800 kilometers or some 500 miles away. And hundreds of these blocks were utilized within the Grand Gallery and the so-called King's Chamber, as well as the enormous relief columns that stand above it, which extend hundreds of feet above ground level. To put this enormous undertaking into perspective, 80 tons is significantly heavier than a modern Abrams tank, which in itself is extremely heavy. But what's wild is that these 80-ton stones are mere child's play in comparison to other little-known stones the Egyptians cut, carved, moved, and lifted. For example, the Colossi of Memnon, located in Luxor, absolutely dwarfs the largest stones of the Great Pyramid. In fact, they are closer to 10 times as heavy, weighing in at a staggering 720 tons apiece. And not only that, they were carved from one single piece of stone, which is incredible when you consider that the seated statues stand over 60 feet or 18 meters in height. So large that you can only properly appreciate their eminence when compared to people. Even the pedestals these two statues stand upon are enormous, weighing in the realm of hundreds of tons. In fact, so heavy that half of them are now submerged within the earth. Egyptian antiquity authorities no longer allow anyone to touch these statues, so it's difficult to find any recent high-quality photos for comparison. However, I found a few that were taken during some restoration efforts a number of years ago. Notice that this man isn't even half the size of this statue's lower leg, and here's another showing an adult man that is barely taller than the ankle. And by the way, you can clearly see that the statue on the right was heavily damaged and restored, as you can see from its now blocky configuration. But make no mistake, it is documented that both of these statues were indeed carved from one piece of stone, which is obviously apparent when you look at the statue on the left. But if the size and weight of these statues isn't interesting enough, when you learn that they originate from a quarry near Cairo, which is nearly 400 miles away by road, or just over 300 miles away in a totally straight line as the bird flies, we have to ask ourselves, how on earth did the ancients move stones of this magnitude and over such a vast distance? Now this is the part of the video where things get very interesting, because although the Colossi of Memnon statues are closer to 10 times as heavy as the largest stones within the Great Pyramid, they are not even close to the largest statues created by the Egyptians. What you're seeing here are the remnants of the Ramesseum, which is one of the largest stone monoliths ever cut, carved, transported, and placed in human history. This behemoth was shaped from one solid piece of granite stone and is estimated to have weighed 1,000 tons or some 2 million pounds. That's the weight of approximately 15 Abrams tanks. And get this, it was somehow transported at least 115 miles from the Aswan Quarry. This is in the realm of exceeding what we are even capable of doing today, as you will see for yourself in just a moment. But let me first ask the question, which is, what on earth destroyed it and into so many pieces? This was a seated statue, and it's hard to imagine that even an earthquake would have knocked it over. I mean, if it were a standing statue, toppling over and breaking apart would not be hard to imagine, but having been seated, it boggles the mind to comprehend what type of forces would have been involved to not only knock it over, but for it to break apart with this level of devastation. And just look at how large various aspects of it are. The top of the foot is up to my belly button, and I'm 5'10" or 178 centimeters. And this statue is so large that it's difficult to capture a good photo of it, especially one that shows you just how insanely large it actually is. Pictures do not do it justice for what your eyes witness in person. And you might also find it curious to know that this statue was the inspiration for the famous Ozymandias poem, which describes the mysterious discovery of a stone statue in the Egyptian desert, and on the pedestal it read, "My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. "Look upon my works, ye mighty, and despair." That's epic. And by the way, Ozymandias is the ancient Greek word for the name Ramses II, who this statue is said to be of. Now, when I said that this is in the realm of exceeding what we're even capable of doing today, let me share some fascinating details with you that will paint all of us a picture for just how spectacular and mysterious the works of the ancient Egyptians actually is. What you're seeing here is the largest ultra-class haul truck ever created. The Belaz 75710 is a sheer marvel of engineering. So large that you must travel up 2 flights of stairs to reach the cockpit. In fact, the tires themselves are 13¼ feet in diameter. That's virtually equivalent to the largest African bull elephants. Each tire weighs more than 5 tons, or 10,000 pounds, and get this, cost $60,000 a piece. And this truck has 8 of them. Now, this is where things get wild, as this 16-cylinder diesel truck produces 4,600 horsepower and has the highest payload capacity on Earth, achieving a max load of 496 tons. That means it could carry approximately 8 Abrams tanks if they could actually fit in it. Now, as unbelievably impressive as that is, let us focus on the astonishing fact that the statue at the Ramesseum is quite literally double the weight capacity of this truck. This in itself calls the very laws of physics into question, and that it raises the prospect that the ancients must surely have possessed some type of lost technology that we are unaware of to have accomplished what they did. And if you have any doubts about that, what I'm going to show you now should be the proverbial nail in the coffin to prove this point. In 2012, the Los Angeles County Museum of Art took up a project called Levitated Mass, where they chose to create a large-scale public art sculpture that consisted of a 340-ton granite stone that would appear to be levitating in front of the museum. This 680,000-pound stone is 21 feet tall and was transported 106 miles from the quarry. And this is where it gets amazing, as this 340-ton stone had to have a custom trailer truck constructed around it. And get this, the trailer was 260 feet long, 32 feet wide, had 44 axles, and 196 semi-truck wheels. We've of course all heard of 18-wheelers. Well, this thing has 11 times as many tires. And to move this stone 106 miles, it traveled 4 miles an hour, took 11 nights, and costed a whopping $10 million. In fact, this project was said to be, quote, the largest operation of its kind since the Egyptians built the pyramids. And it took a year of planning and preparation to complete it from start to finish. So let me get this straight. This 340-ton stone is well under half the weight of the 2 Colossi of Memnon statues that were moved more than 3 times the distance. And this 340-ton stone is virtually 1/3 the weight of the 1,000-ton Ramesseum statue, which was moved even further than this one. See, this is what I'm getting at. We have absolutely no clue how the ancients moved stones of this magnitude. And to be clear, I am not saying that the dynastic Egyptians didn't move stones. Of course they did. In fact, there's a depiction of a statue being dragged on wood sleds by workmen. But that statue was 1/3 the height of all the others, at 22 feet, and weighed 64 tons. Thus, a microfraction of the weight that the various statues discussed in this video are, and just as importantly to mention, was moved over a very short distance. Make no mistake, the dynastic Egyptians that we are aware of accomplished impressive feats, but I do not think for a second that wood sleds could possibly support 2 million pounds without being totally crushed and obliterated, and not to mention pushed into the earth along with it. And never mind how on earth they would have even lifted the stones on top of them. I mean, we're talking about 15 times the weight of this one example. I should also mention that modern academics theorize that surely the ancients would have utilized the Nile River to transport various stones rather than over land. However, the reality is that there is zero evidence that the ancient Egyptians possessed any vessel that was even remotely capable of transporting 720 tons, much less 1,000 tons. And this isn't even taking into account the sheer physics that would be at play when lifting that type of weight on and off the boat. In fact, if you take it upon yourself to research known Egyptian vessels of that era, it's abundantly clear that stones of this magnitude were not transported on the Nile with the known capabilities of the dynastic Egyptians that we were all taught about in school. And that's not to say that the Egyptians didn't move smaller stone blocks on the Nile by boat. This is documented. For example, the notable Diary of Merer describes a receipt for limestone blocks that were brought to Giza by boat. However, it's already known that millions of small limestone blocks make up the hundreds of mastabas and various structures that surround the pyramids. Again, these blocks are another microfraction compared to the 80-ton stones inside the Great Pyramid, so there's no comparison here. And besides all that, the Tora Quarry mentioned in the Diary of Merer, where those smaller stones originate from, is only 8.5 miles from Giza. And by the way, while I'm at it, it's also worth mentioning that in the case of the two colossi of Memnon statues originating from Cairo, if they had been moved by some primitive barge, they would have had to fight the current as the Nile River flows from south to north. And again, Luxor is more than 300 miles south of Cairo. Like I always say, look and think for yourself. Do you really think that legions of half-naked, barefoot men rolled 1,000-ton stones hundreds of miles? Or are these nothing more than an academic textbook illustration based on nothing more than theoretical fiction? Now, real quick, to paint us a picture of the kind of magnitude that we're dealing with here, here is a short montage video showing a bunch of modern fails where people try to lift and move stones that are a fraction of the weight of the ones that we're talking about in this video, and look at how this goes. How'd you like that choice of music? Now, obviously, those people messed up and didn't use equipment correctly or did not use the correct equipment at all. And I'm not saying we can't lift massive stones today or 1,000-ton stones. Yes, we can. But this illustrates the point that I'm trying to make of just how insane of a project this was for the ancients when they didn't possess the type of technology that we do today. Now, to wrap this up, let me read to you the full Ozymandias poem, as I think you'll find it to be quite awesome. I met a traveler from an antique land who said, 2 vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them on the sand half sunk a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor weld those passions red, which yet survive, stamped on those lifeless things, the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed. And on the pedestal these words appear. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains round the decay of that colossal wreck. Boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. I have to say I like that poem. My name is Jimmy Corsetti. My channel is called Bright Insight. Hit the like button and subscribe, and leave a comment sharing your thoughts on everything that was discussed in this video. That said, I'll close it up here. Take care, everybody.